Hi, Helen. Thanks for joining us for Contraception Conversations today.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get started on questions, can you tell us a little about yourself, like your pronouns, where you live, your hobbies, and your career path?
I'm Ellen Barfield. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, which is stolen Piscataway land. And there have been a lot of other tribes through here. It's rather a route. It's right at the top of the Chesapeake Bay. So you can imagine people going up and down the eastern side of the country often came through, but it's primarily Piscataway land. I go by she or they, and that's a year or two development. I've lived as a cis woman, but I totally resonate with the idea that imagining there's male, 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 and female, 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 and nothing in between is stupid. And I love the openness that is developing. So I use she, they. Career path, I haven't been employed for over 30 years. I've been able to be a full-time peace and justice activist, primarily anti-war, but certainly more and more climate these last 5 or 10 years, and justice in general. And I've been extremely lucky to be able to do that. I was married for 25 years to a physician, so he had good pay. So that was how I did that. Before that, I was heading actually for veterinary school and did attend for a little while, but I left that to become an activist. And don't regret it, but it was hard to do it in the moment because it's so damn hard to get into vet school. Whatever. Hobbies, I love to read. I love to bicycle. Those are my 2 main ones.
Awesome. So what feelings have you had about becoming a parent throughout your life, and have they changed over time?
Yeah, they definitely changed. At first, and I was married at 19 the first time, prior husband. Not now. Not now is how I felt at first. And he was not anxious at all about it. Just, I was on the pill. Started on the pill when we got married, in fact. We had used condoms during our courtship. And it was just, yeah, I'm young. We'll see how it goes. Didn't ever really think about it much, but just kind of assumed, the normal would take place, and went on and no, not now, not now, not now, and got to the point of saying not at all.
So why did you choose the Childfree by Choice path?
Well, us beginning distantly to see activism as a path I might take. Obviously, many parents are wonderful, vigorous activists, but of course it's harder. And there was a real, wasn't exactly a light bulb because I kind of already got the concepts, but it solidified it. The sitcom All in the Family. When Archie Bunker's daughter, Gloria, and her husband, Mike, or Meathead, as Archie called him, were considering having a baby. And they talked about the terrible climate impacts, although of course climate wasn't the word at that time, but environmental impacts, white middle class or upper working class kids. Those things were discussed on that show. That was a fairly hard-hitting show. And I went, yeah. And they, of course, because it was a sitcom and babies were a great situation, had a baby. But I chose not to, and that kind of firmed it up for me.
That's so interesting. So you did touch on this a little earlier. What contraception methods have you used, and what has been your experience with them?
Well, initially, when my first husband and I were first getting to know each other, we were careless, and something could have happened. We were lucky, and it didn't. We used pulling out. It's a little bit better than nothing, but not much. But pretty quickly, we moved on to condoms, and those were fine. And I went ahead and started on the pill as we were approaching our marriage, and stayed on the pill, not entirely straight through, but for about 17 years. No, that's not right. 14 years. We were married 14 years. we were apart from each other in the military for a while. And during those times I went off it. And so I didn't realize how much weight the pill put on me over a long period of time and up and down. In the military, I had to keep my weight off. So that was part of it. But I got to where I weighed about 200 pounds. Right now I weigh about 135. So that was a lot of extra weight. And wow, and that is something the pill can do. And I didn't have any other problems with it. It worked fine for me. It was nice to be dependable and regulated. And it certainly worked to prevent conception. I worked at Planned Parenthood for a while. And because of that, I knew, this was in Texas, I knew that there was a periodic flow of government money. I don't know if it was state or federal, probably federal, knowing Texas, but I don't know. But anyway, money to pay for tubal ligations for women who could not otherwise pay for it. And while I was working at Planned Parenthood, I was still married to my first husband. Things were okay financially, so I didn't qualify and didn't even seek it. The pill was working. And it hadn't rocked on to the weight issue. Later on, after I left him and became an activist and was voluntarily impoverished, I knew about the program and that it comes around periodically. So I kept in touch and finally called at the right time, got signed up, had a tubal ligation in the fall of 1990. And that was easy, went well, and it worked. So I've been sterilized ever since. And, you know, something permanent, if your choice is permanent, is definitely better than staying on meds. They're expensive, they have side effects. So,
yeah, that makes sense. When you made the choice to be child-free, how did your partner, peers, or family react?
Interestingly enough, I gotta say, thank you so much to both of my parents. They never said a word. And as it happens, there are 3 siblings in my family. My sister in the middle, see, they couldn't get pregnant again. So they adopted and boom, mom got pregnant. My brother and sister are not much more than a year apart. But that's how it happened. Daddy was a lawyer, so he could work some kind of a semi-private adoption process. I was 6 at the time. I don't know much about it, but that's how it worked. But she's the only one who has had children. So my parents don't have any blood grandchildren, and never in the slightest way did they ever say anything about that. I've gone around with him about other things, but not that, and I am very appreciative. And my first husband was like, yeah, okay. He later remarried a woman who already had some children, so he was able to parent in that way, and it never was an issue for him. And his parents had other grandchildren, and yeah, okay, that's fine. That's your choice. Nobody gave me a hard time. Nobody closed in. I've certainly gotten a hard time from other people who think that every woman has to reproduce, but not my closed in folks. And I really appreciate that.
That's lovely. What has been the biggest challenge about choosing to be child-free?
I challenge norms in a lot of ways, so it hasn't been like the big issue, but very definitely there's a lot of pressure. Women are supposed to have children, by God. I certainly hear that, stupid remarks, and of course I just slough them off, but it's still aggravating. For heaven's sake, especially these days when the climate is melting and we got a whole lot of things to do. One of them is helping every woman know that there's healthcare, so the few children she might choose to have will live, and that she can keep from being pregnant constantly. Both of those things, those are deeply important for women around the world, and also because of the climate impact. But it's, you know, assuming that everybody has to follow one narrow path, regardless of what it is just horribly abusive and rude and needs to end. But it's, you know, down through history, yes, most women had children. So it is still a very strong expectation in society in general.
Yeah. So on the more fun side, what has been the best part about choosing to be child-free?
Being able to appreciate not having brought, this was another piece of it. I didn't specifically say this when I was talking about All in the Family and my solidification of permanency. White middle-class Western children literally take food out of the mouths of other children around the world. And it's not that I'm patting myself on the back, but I'm just deeply grateful that circumstances were such that I could realize that the world very definitely doesn't need more of me. I am overprivileged. I live in a country which steals way more than it deserves. And I don't want to encourage that by just adding more bodies, more mouths to this particular country and circumstance.
Yeah. What's one piece of advice you'd give to people who know they don't want children?
Stand firm. Yes, of course, find other friends who made that choice or who support you in your choice. But just stand firm, because you'll get people who hassle you about it. That's their problem, not yours.
I like that. And my last question, are there any resources you'd like to share? Somewhere you found community with other child-free people, or books or podcasts?
I saw that question and I went, I really don't, although obviously, and it's not that Planned Parenthood argues against childbearing, not at all, but they are a resource to manage one's fertility in whatever way one chooses. And of course, they've been terribly attacked and defunded, and that needs to change. And I hope Biden can address it, and Biden and administration can address it, along with many other things. I think he did cancel the international gag rule, didn't he? Pretty quick.
Thanks.
Usually Democrats do when they come into office. But, that's another thing that the US needs to do, funding reproductive freedom efforts around the world, not just not obstructing them. So Planned Parenthood does great work, needs extra funding if people can afford it, definitely needs support, sign petitions, call Congress, all that stuff.
Great. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for doing this project. It's really important. People need support in making this somewhat unusual and not entirely approved of choice.
Agreed.